Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Monday Sidelines, college football, basketball blitz. We're ready to go. Got a lot to talk about today. We're going to start off with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports over in Athens. Talk about Georgia wrapping up another SEC championship. That's the fifth SEC East title for Kirby Smart in the last 6 years. First SEC championship since 2017, but two straight undefeated seasons. This is unbelievable. They have won 12-0, 12-0. How many teams do that? That is really rare. So we'll get into that. Georgia's matchup with Ohio State. Ohio State being in the college football playoff is it's a disgrace. It's just that's what it is. But I hope Georgia beats them 70-0, 77. Go for 84 if you can. But in the second segment, we're going to be joined, got a lot to talk about, and we're going to be joined in the second segment by our friend David Schultz, Schultzy-cast, the Sultan of the Sunbelt, WNSP down in Mobile, FM 105. Top of hour number 2, Franz Beard checks in, GatorbaitMedia.com, the Iron Duke, and Jimmy Ott, the Ott Father, in the fourth segment, ESPN 104.5 down in Baton Rouge, talking LSU Tigers and, of course, betting lines. We are here every Monday through Saturday, 2 hours every day. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. Glad to have you. Follow us. We are a sports radio show and podcast. That's what we do. That's who we are. We stick to sports. And Merry Christmas, everybody. And it's great to be a dog, a DGD, a damn good dog. And let's bring a damn good dog on board. Jordan Hill. Jordan, 50 points in an SEC championship game. Georgia wins by so many games by big margins, but in these big contests on the biggest stages, Georgia really, really shows why they're the number one team in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at that game, 35 points in the first half, that tied an SEC championship game record with 2020 Alabama. Wasn't perfect. Secondary has a lot to work on, especially you mentioned they're playing Ohio State. Those Ohio State receivers, if Georgia gives them the opportunity, they can make plays. Gave up, I think, over 500 passing yards to LSU, but I thought it was really telling in that game. You know, when you play a team of Georgia's caliber, the margin for error on the other side is non-existent. You've got to catch breaks. And when that game was going on early, it was Georgia catching all the breaks. You know, Chris Smith making a heads-up play on that blocked field goal. You could tell he was kind of watching, kind of seeing LSU guys start walking to the sideline. I mean, that's a super senior understanding the moment. Getting the ball, he had one of his teammates, Smile Munden, was kind of waving him off like, hey, don't do it. He got it, and, you know, that was 7 easy points for Georgia. And then the deflection off the LSU helmet for the interception that Smile Munden made, Rob, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I mean, that kind of told me early on, because I thought LSU played well, especially early in that game, that it just wasn't going to be LSU's day. You have to catch those kind of breaks if you're going to beat a team like Georgia.
Yeah, and you do. And you look at the history, Georgia, LSU, I mean, the series, I think LSU led it 18-13-1. They had won 3 of the 4 times they had played in the SEC championship game. And, man, it was just not going to be LSU's day. And that LSU's a good football team. No question about it. They've got now, at the end of the game, Garrett Nussmeier came in 300 yards passing. This guy's a really good quarterback. I mean, his dad, Doug Nussmeier, was offensive coordinator at Alabama. We all remember that. But I think the thing about Georgia is they're focused. They play a full 60. They don't just let up. They don't take their foot off the gas, Jordan. They want to prove it. As Kirby says, you're either elite or you're not. And he expects you to play 4 quarters of football and not let the other team get a bunch of garbage points on you. LSU earned those points they got.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And really, there was a window in that third quarter for LSU to make it a game. Georgia fumbles, LSU goes down and scores, and then LSU gets the ball back after, I think, a 3-and-out by Georgia. And I think if they would have scored, it would have probably brought it to around 10. I'd have to go back and look at the notes. But there's a 4th and 1, near in the red zone, I'm pretty sure, and Georgia stuffs it. And that was a big play. I mean, if Georgia had let its foot off the gas, that LSU team, I thought that LSU would come into that game, and I didn't think they were just going to ease their way through it because they had nothing to lose. After losing Texas A&M, the motivation becomes, hey, let's knock these guys maybe not out of the playoff, but probably knock them out of that number one spot. Let's try to, spoil things. And LSU put up a really good fight, but credit to just the way Georgia kept playing. They kept making plays. Jalen Carter makes a tackle for loss on Jaden Daniels that there's going to be posters of that for Georgia fans. Him just picking up a grown man and just holding him until they blew the whistle. I guarantee that's going to be on a poster in some houses around the state of Georgia. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that his legs were spinning. It was like a cartoon character. And that was the one. My son Wilson was talking to me last night about that game. He just graduated from Auburn. He said Jalen Carter is from Apopka, Florida, I think. Yes. And they call him the bread man. Is that his nickname?
I haven't heard that one, but I'd believe it. I'd just make sure whatever I called him, I'd make sure it was good by him.
Yeah, that's right. He's this Georgia team. I go back to a week ago when Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football and the Media Guides, was on the show. And he said, my coach of the year choice, because I asked him, he said, believe it or not, it's Kirby Smart. What a job he's done losing 15 guys to the NFL draft, 5 defensive players in the first round. Is this Georgia team now, I got to ask the question, are they close to last year's team? I mean, you can't truly say that till the last game is over, but all signs point to that happening.
You can make that argument. I mean, to me, I think at this point, the offense may be a little more effective and more efficient. And just the fact they have so many options. But I'm not sure the defense is quite there. But I say that, and then look at how the defense has played all year. I mean, I'd say Saturday was one of their poorer performances. I mean, giving up 30 points. That's, I believe, the most they've given up all year. But still, more than enough. I think the thing that matters for Georgia at this point is you can legitimately make that argument. And, I think everybody come out of last year, we thought that this team would be good before the season. I said 12-0, but I said that they would lose to Alabama in the SEC title game. I thought, they'd probably be just a touch off. They might have still been able to make the playoff in that situation, been like the 3rd or 4th seed. But I think they've exceeded expectations. The offense has looked great. For the most part, Stetson has played even better than he did last season. And again, now they're 2 wins away from winning their 2nd straight national championship. And just given how hard that is today, just to be here, I mean, it's an incredible feat by this program.
Yeah, it is. And December 5th, we know today players can officially get into the portal for the next 45 days. Then that next date will come in May, another window in the portal. But Kirby, again, wasn't saying he didn't want players from the portal, but this team is pretty much an organic, developed team. And I'm not sure if any of their starters or significant, playtime guys are from the portal, are they?
No, I mean, they've picked players from the portal before. Eric Gilbert, who's on this team last year, some pretty significant guys like Darion Kendrick. He came in from the portal. I'll be interested to see what Georgia does this year. And I think, watch these next few weeks as Georgia plays. I'm kind of curious if we'll see a narrative form that's like, well, Georgia's being able to win because they haven't gone into the portal. And I don't know if that's exactly accurate. I mean, they looked in the portal last year, and I think there were some guys that, they might have been interested in that they just ultimately did not land. But they're not going to pick people just to pick people. And Kirby made that point, even going back to SEC Media Days, and he talked about it a little bit in detail yesterday on the Peach Bowl teleconference and was saying, that you got to be careful about what you bring in. You want to make sure you bring in the right guys. And he made the point that it's always helpful if he's known the kid since like high school. If it was kids they recruited, I think they probably will try to add some people. I'll be really interested in like receiver. If they try to add an experienced wide receiver this go around.
Yeah, that'll be critical. I would trust what Kirby Smart's doing. He took the process from Nick Saban. As long as he stays true to Georgia and true to himself, I don't see anything changing at Georgia. Stetson Bennett, I don't care how old he is, these ridiculous statements being made by people. He's throwing against a bunch of 18. I mean, look, people have got to get off of the Stetson Bennett in good kick. I mean, what more proof do you need? It's so ridiculous, but it's a narrative. And there are minders out there, just like there are minders that made sure that if they had to move heaven and earth, which they seemingly did, to get Ohio State into the playoff, they'll do it. Stetson Bennett deserves to be on the plane, on the private jet with the Georgia entourage, you included. I want you on that plane, Lauren Smith, to go to New York for the Heisman. He's earned that right. I don't care if he's 5'10 or 6'5. I don't care what his projection is for the NFL. That kid is one of the best stories in college football in recent memory. Jimmy, back me up on that one. Jimmy Hodge in the bullpen. Batter, swing. I want you're going to back me up on that one. If you don't, that's okay.
No, well, I just wanted to kind of comment on a couple of factors as far as Georgia's run is concerned up to this point. I thought the opening series of the game pretty much summed up LSU special teams blunders that killed them in the Florida State game. And when it looked like they had a chance to grab the momentum early, they don't know the rules on a block field goal. I mean, they must have thought it was an extra point the way they were, walking off the field. But it's shocking how many coaches don't know the rules. Todd Monken didn't know the rules. They had the camera on him in the press box. No, get away. And then when he saw there was nobody within 30 yards of the guy pitching, go. And, at that level of football, especially with the Brian Kelly team, it was just shocking to just realize that how many players don't know the rules, but obviously the special teams coach didn't communicate the rules to those guys either. And at this level of football, that absolutely cannot happen. But when you looked at Brian Kelly on the sideline after that play, he had this look on his face like, okay, hey, this is year one. This is just kind of baked into the cake. These are young 18, 19-year-old kids in many cases that are on these special teams. But of course, teams like Alabama, Georgia will have starters on those special teams also. So, you do have a mixture of everything, but it's like, well, he wasn't totally surprised, and he said, okay, listen, our chances in this game aren't good anyway. Let's just play as if it didn't happen. And I thought for the most part, LSU did a good job of that. They gave it their best effort, and Georgia knew they were in a game, even though from that point on, it was probably obvious that Georgia was going to win. But still, I thought it was a good test for Georgia in that when Nussmeier came in the game, they really exposed some flaws. And even for the number one ranked team in the country, it's always good for them to realize that you can get knocked down to size if you're not focused every second of every game, especially in a championship game setting.
Yeah. Jordan, great points from Jimmy.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, I think it's pretty interesting with the block field goal. After the game, Kirby Smart said, we go over that maybe once every 3 weeks. And I think you saw the veteran sort of knowledge and know-how from Chris Smith to kind of recognize the opportunity. And it was funny because I'd forgotten about this. Kirby pointed to the national championship game in January. Georgia blocks a field goal, and the ball kind of flies at Quay Walker, and he kind of tries to grab it, and it kind of deflects off him. And Alabama, he said, Alabama could have got that ball, and they would have got the ball back. So, they really stress being smart about knowing the opportunity and sort of seeing the window. And, hey, if it's not there, just, let the ball lie where it is. But, yeah, there's a lot to work on coming out of that game, even though you score 50 points. And I tell you who's probably not a happier person because of that than Kirby Smart, because he knows there's all kind of areas they can point to and say, we got to get better here if we're going to go win a title.
Well, I mean, we all know this. I mean, whenever something really good happens to you, you start going, all right, no, a lot of people will say, well, now something bad's got to happen. Well, they're idiots. You know what you do? Something good happens to you. Say, hey, man, I want seconds. I want thirds. Kirby Smart and these elite coaches like Nick Saban will go back and spend a lot of time on special teams. But we're about to go to a break. And Jordan, if you can hang on, I got a couple more questions afterwards,
Sure.
if you can. Okay. But the thing about it is, my friend, his son is a field goal kicker in high school. They just wrapped up their season, lost in the playoffs. Said they spend about 10, maybe 15 minutes a day in practice on special teams. And I go back to what former Auburn assistant coach for a long time, Paul Davis, told me one time when I was writing for the Auburn Plainsman. He said, Rob, it takes special players to play special teams. Because if you break down a game, it's about a third of every game. It's those little things. And I always notice that Auburn and Georgia are two schools historically that have always given a full 4-year ride to field goal kickers. And look at the litany of great names at Georgia and Auburn. I mean, Kevin Butler, they're going to ask him to come out here and kick it from 100,000 miles. I mean, think about that. Redan High School up there in Stone Mountain. You think about all the great kickers, and Georgia has had them. How many close games and victories that's won. And Nick Saban in Alabama, they don't lose many games. But like Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 says, when they do lose, it's epic. Kind of like when the world's most interesting man. When he does something, it's interesting. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back for a few more minutes on this Monday with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports in the Classic City on Georgia.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Jordan Hill, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne here with you. Monday's Sidelines, college football, basketball blitz. Jordan, real quick before you go on to your next issue here this morning, I got to ask you, what is it about Ohio State other than they get more of a push from the national media to get them into the big college football playoff, undeservingly so, than any other program in the history of college football? But other than that, what about this team is going to keep you, Georgia fans, and most of all, Georgia coaches up at night worrying?
It's got to be the passing game. They've got elite receivers. I think that they can make plays if you give them the opportunity. And Georgia showed some real vulnerabilities. I think that Keely Ringo has had a pretty up and down 2022. The hero of the national championship game back in January, he struggled. He flat out struggled against LSU on Saturday, and I think he would say as much. But the thing that I think really helps Georgia, we did a reaction podcast yesterday after the playoff, and at the time I thought, Georgia might be a 4 or 5 point favorite. I think it's a little bit higher than that, but Georgia gets practically an entire month to prepare for Ohio State. Yeah. I think that's crucial in being able to sort of learn how to stop these guys. I think Georgia's going to be in good shape just because I think Georgia's more physical. But if we go to that game on New Year's Eve and we see it's close, I think it's because of their passing game. And I think there's those receivers and CJ Stroud as well are very capable of making plays if Georgia gives them the window to do it.
Okay. Jordan, I know you got a tight window here, and I wanted to be respectful of your time. Always appreciate you being on here with us because you are so well prepared. You're getting better and better every time you're on. You just got more knowledge, I guess. And plus, it's fun covering a team that's not losing. It's just sometimes you feel like Florence Nightingale if you're an Auburn fan right now, trying to nurse all those wounds. But tell people how they can follow you, keep up with you, and look forward to having you on back next week talking about the Ohio State game as we get closer to round one of the college football playoff.
Sure thing. Dogs247.com on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill and at Dogs247. Transfer portal open today, so keep an eye on that. I think all SEC may be coming out sometime today. So no game this week, but Rob, just as busy as usual.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Never stops, man. Have a great week.
Appreciate you guys.
All right. Same here. Jimmy, all right. It happened yesterday afternoon when the College Football Playoff Committee announced that Ohio State was coming on. Alabama was the fifth team, looking in from the outside. Were you surprised? I guess I'm asking a question almost rhetorically that I know the answer to. So let me rephrase that. Were you ever in doubt that Ohio State, if things would happen the way they did, would be in the college football playoff, regardless of their strength of schedule being weak and the curb stomping by Michigan the week before, who has a strength of schedule, by the way? Thank you, Cole Kubelik, for putting those stats out. Strength of schedule for Michigan, 112. Keep in mind, there's only 131 Division I schools.
No, I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, Tony Barnhart pretty much called the shot when we found out that Ohio State was fifth in the last college football playoff ranking on Tuesday night. That pretty much told the story. I mean, Alabama was not going to jump them with neither team playing this weekend. And I found it interesting when Boo Kerrigan, the chairman of the committee, made his explanations. It's interesting how you can make arguments that fit your narrative, that talking about teams that did not win their conference championship, and in Ohio State and Alabama's case, did not make it to the championship game. Yet that doesn't affect Ohio State, despite the fact they lost their last game against their arch rival with the Big Ten championship on the line, 45-23 at home. It just doesn't seem to affect them. And they had a couple of other very dubious performances. The surprisingly difficult 21-7 win over a 1-11 Northwestern team, in which the game was 14-7 until midway in the fourth quarter, and then a Penn State offense that had been struggling and had been beaten by 4 touchdowns a couple of weeks earlier by Michigan, made their new look defense look very ordinary. But again, they used the argument, the committee did, that Ohio State's victory over Notre Dame in the opener, and that was a Notre Dame team with new everything, a new head coach, new quarterback, new personnel, and yet they took Ohio State down almost to the very end in Columbus, and so they considered that a big victory. And then also the Penn State victory, a big victory. So they only played, I guess, 3 ranked teams all year. And actually, it was just one of those situations where you just knew Ohio State was in when they were announced at number 5 on Tuesday night.
But, also watching the TCU Kansas State game, God, that was a great game. And Ken Capps sent me the picture of his wife about the Horned Frogs, 13-0. It was just, they didn't get there. They're 12-1, but I felt like very comfortable after that loss in overtime. Max Dugan, and the number of people that were texting me and saying he's my new hero was off the charts. I'm sure you got the same number of responses from people. But that's what I love about folks like Ken Capps and Bo Carter, the people we have covering out in Texas. I think the SEC is a great conference. But I think top to bottom, the Big 12 is the second best conference. I don't know how far apart it is from the SEC this year. Kansas State's a good team. They finished 10-3 in the regular season. They're gonna, aren't they playing Alabama in the Sugar Bowl?
Yeah.
That's gonna be a really good game. I thought TCU, Max Dugan is he's one of the most gritty, tough quarterbacks. I mean, he's Stetson Bennett. He's the Stetson Bennett of the Big 12. Again, everyone always looks at the height and the measurements of where this guy's going in the NFL. It's just like these guys that sit out on their team and quit and have a pout fit because things aren't going their way late in the season. They don't want to jeopardize their career. Trust me, your teammates are never going to forget you walking out on them. No one ever forgets their dad walking out on them or their mom. God forbid your parents ever leave a game early because you're getting beat badly. People don't forget that. Here it is today. Merry Christmas, the portal, the Winatorium. Okay. There's thousands of players gone into the portal that still hadn't been picked up. But you can get some good players out of the portal. I'm not saying, it can be good for you, but I thought about something. Jimmy, people aren't really as into all the players on their team. I think they're falling more in love with the schools because coaches have always been able to come and go. But the players, you knew who your players were coming back. And right now, you just know some of them. But with the portal coming up, you might lose 25% of your team to the portal. So it's a lot of interesting stuff. But the Ohio State getting in was offset by TCU staying in. And I think Georgia's going to lay the wood to Ohio State. You're talking about that Northwestern Ohio State game. That's proof right there what happened to them in the Michigan game. And Penn State, one of the more underachieving programs in college football. But again, they're located in the Northeast. They always get the benefit of the doubt, don't they, Jimmy?
Well, Penn State slipped into the top 10 by going 10-2 in that league. And so that was all the leeway that the committee needed to, explain how Ohio State got in, because Alabama was really hurt by some teams that really faltered in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think the LSU performance at A&M really hurt, and then Ole Miss lost 4 out of their last 5 games. So as a result, the committee could look at Alabama's record and see that their best victory was against number 20 Texas, and then also Mississippi State was their other victory against a ranked team. A lot of people don't realize Ole Miss completely fell out of the rankings after their slide at the end of the season, and of course the Lane Kiffin coaching mystery didn't help anything. So they could use that argument. But again, we said it many times. This was the first year that made it really obvious we needed an expanded playoff, because even though Georgia's been number 1 all year, they are not a dominant team. I mean, they had 3 or 4 performances that made you wonder. Obviously, at Missouri, the first half against Kent State, the second half against Florida after they had that big lead. So, we're at a stage right now in college football where it's going to be, I think, dominant to have any one team that's head and shoulders above anybody else with the NIL and the transfer portal. As a part of the game now.
Yeah, and I also say, though, when the bell rings and they come out of their corner on the big stage in those games like Oregon and Tennessee and LSU, I mean, they put 49 on Oregon, 27 on Tennessee, but they held the number 1 offense in the country without a touchdown for 55 minutes and 50 points on LSU. Georgia plays up to the level of their competition. That's what this team does. You like them to play that way every week, but they don't. That's just what it is. David Schultz, the Sultan of the Sunbelt, eating a breakfast of grits and grillade, a little boudin on a Monday. Man, college football, it just gets better every week, every day. And now we got the 4 teams in the playoff. I thought Alabama or Tennessee would get that 5th spot, but I shouldn't have thought like an intelligent man, because the Northeastern media establishment is built and designed to make sure that teams that are in the Big Ten, when in doubt, get the nudge over the top, because 70% of the TV sets are in that footprint. So I think Michigan, I guess you got to put them there. Georgia, TCU. Only question is, Dave, who would you have put as your 4th team in the college football playoff?
Well, I do think Alabama is better than TCU, but I think TCU, deserved it. There was a time in that football game where, they punted and Kansas State fumbled. If Kansas State doesn't fumble and they blow out TCU, they may not make it. Also, by the way, Alabama had a chance. All right. LSU gave it to them on a silver platter. Here's their 2-point conversion. Stop us. That's when Alabama's chances in the playoff ended. Guess who made a stop? Twice from the 1-yard line? Kansas State. So they stopped them twice. It's really tough to not put TCU in after losing in overtime to a top 10 team. I know they have 3 losses, but they lost in overtime to a top 10 team. LSU just doesn't have a big win. What is it? Texas, Mississippi State. That's their big wins. They have some close wins as well. I know their losses are close, but they skated by a bad A&M team. The quarterback that almost beat Alabama isn't even at A&M anymore. He's gone. He's out. So, I don't know if they would have beaten Tennessee in overtime, but, the defense got shredded and the game management was just as bad at the end. It should have at least gone to overtime. So that's a mistake. Alabama, didn't live up to expectations. I went back and looked. They were a plus 180 favorite to win it. Georgia, the defending national champions with all their NFL defections, were 3rd, actually. So, I'm not so sure about the whole media thing. If the media really cared about, matchups, Alabama would have gotten in, because talk about nobody caring about TCU. I'm not even sure they care about TCU in Fort Worth, TCU. So if they really wanted the best TV matchups, Alabama would have gotten in, and you would have had Georgia against Alabama and Michigan against Ohio State. So I'm not sure I buy that theory. TCU had 1 loss. Ohio State had 1 loss. Alabama had 2. Were they close? You bet. But, I went back, Jimmy, and looked at that 2-point conversion. Let's make sure we understand where Alabama was on that 2-point conversion. They had 12 men on the field against LSU before they called timeout. And they didn't call timeout because they had 12 men on the field. They called timeout because they wanted to set up to know what they were doing. Guess what happened after the timeout? They had 12 men on the field. They were racing guys on and racing guys off before they snapped the football. If Jaden Daniels was actually looking, compared to looking at the sidelines for, what they do when they – I don't know what they was looking at the sidelines for, because he just called the play. I'm not sure they were changing that. And they had a chance, and they could not communicate properly. They wanted to switch on the corner. The slot corner was supposed to take the tight end, and the safety was going to take the wide receiver, and they never did it, and the safety couldn't get over to make a tackle on Mason Taylor. So it's not like Alabama didn't have a chance. So, and I know Alabama fans blame, the refs on the Tennessee ball game, but this is not on the refs, and it's not on the committee. Alabama had the chances and didn't take advantage of them.
Well, and along that line, you're right. You had the whole regular season.
Can I say something? My hair looks really good, by the way. I got a good hair day.
It is. Hey, listen now. The interesting thing about it, for Alabama and Tennessee, those 2, and then Ohio State, that was the big debate. So you say Alabama had 5 games. I can't remember an Alabama team having 5 games go down to the last play. We know about Texas A&M at home against a bad A&M team. They lost to Tennessee. Tennessee won that game. The officials didn't make any tackles in that game. You can point out bad calls if you want to, but then you think
there were a lot of those.
Yeah, there were. But the bottom line is LSU, that loss, that one hurt. But Tennessee, now if you say Tennessee or Alabama, Tennessee beat Alabama head to head. And they beat LSU in Baton Rouge. And I don't give a damn if it's day or night. They won the game.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm so tired of
Yeah,
hearing that.
That
You
was
know,
ridiculous.
it's a totally different. It doesn't matter.
Well, it
No,
is, but
you
I
can't-
agree with you.
You can't pick and choose. You got to. But those being said, you got to flip a coin on the Tennessee Alabama because. But Ohio State, just you're right. Those other two schools had the two losses. We go back to 2017. Auburn with two losses was 10-2, number 2 in the CFP rankings in the rematch to Georgia. If you'd have had a healthy Cam Petway, or not in the doghouse, to back up Kerryon Johnson, he wouldn't have been in the game late against Alabama and hurt his shoulder. And Auburn basically had no chance without Kerryon. He was at 25% in that game. So that would have been the only time you'd had a two-loss team in the CFP. So Ohio State just backs in there. But I think they're going to get curb stomped by Georgia. And we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. And great stuff, man. Great stuff. I know Jimmy's chomping at the bits to jump on that because your record is what it is. And one loss Ohio State snuck in. We'll talk about it after this.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Rob Browne back here on this Monday college football and basketball blitz sidelines. Keep in mind, folks, Hewlett and Dunn, boot and clothing company on the historic square, Collierville, Tennessee. Check the website out, hewlettandunn.com. Going to have an after-hours trunk show for Duckhead December 9th. And they've got more cool clothes that you have ever seen. They're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. On a day like today when it's raining, it would be nice to have a Filson field jacket. They can get you anything you want. Great boots, great clothing. Open right now every day of the week, Sundays as well, through Christmas. hewlettandunn.com. David, when you look at it, again, the playoff now this year, and we've talked about it a lot, it begs for the 12-team format.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Love it. Oh, I love it. Yeah. I don't buy the whole thing. It takes away. Is someone really not going to watch Ohio State Michigan because they may play again in a couple of weeks? I mean,
yeah.
If we get to the divisions, if we erase the divisions, we wouldn't have had Michigan and Purdue. We would have had Michigan, Ohio State again.
Yeah.
So and when was the last time? You know what the up until the NCAA tournament, the largest regular season basketball game watch was last year? 4 million people watched Duke, Carolina. When was the last time Duke, Carolina in the regular season meant anything other than who wins the ball game? So I'm not buying that. I also like the idea that now maybe you do get more. Usually, the Alabamas of the world play these games in a neutral site, but this year they went to Austin, which was great. And next year, Texas is coming to Tuscaloosa. So you can do more of those games on campus. And you don't have to go undefeated, right? You can have one loss. Probably can't have two, but you can have one loss. So you're not, why is, Jimmy, I'm not sure Nick Saban went about it the right way on trying to, the two close losses are a good way. But he's saying who would be favored? Well, USC and TCU were favored. How'd that go? And Alabama was favored in all their ball games, and they lost twice. And here's the other thing. Does he really want to bring up the last 3 ball games? Because the last 3 ball games ended up being Ole Miss, which was a nice win at the time, but they lose 4 out of their last 5. The next ball game was Austin Peay. Does anybody think they played well against Austin Peay? No one thinks they played well against Austin Peay. And then they got ravaged for over 310 yards on the ground against Auburn, who fired their coach. That's how good Auburn was. I'm not sure that I'm going crazy on the last 3 ball games if I'm Nick Saban. So I'm with you, Rob. I'm so excited about the 12th team. So in a couple of years, we'll be complaining on the 13th and 14th teams. Think about this. You want to talk about where we may be with the 12th team. Okay. Where would Troy be right now? Troy, if they didn't have the Hail Mary loss to App State, they'd be right close to where Tulane is, and they were 14th in the AP. I don't know where they were in the college football playoff, but that's the kind of team you're going to get. Are they going to get beat badly by, number 5 team, number 5 Alabama? Yeah, maybe, but they're going to get in, and they're going to be psyched to be there, and they're going to be excited. And you never know on who's injured and who's ready to play, and whatever the case may be. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I know we always complain, just like in the basketball tournament, we complained before it was the 65th team. Now we complain who's the 69th team when they're going to probably lose anyways. So I'm so looking forward to it. Thank goodness the Rose Bowl got out of the way, and we can look forward to that. I presume they'll go to 2 home games. The first round and the second round will eventually be at home to save the fans a little bit of money. But
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and along those lines, Jimmy, you and David, the interest in college basketball, with 357 teams that are eligible for the NCAA tournament, has just exploded. I mean, I go back, we all do, to 1979, Michigan State, Indiana State. This Is It, Kenny Loggins song, whatever, Dick Enberg. I mean, it just exploded on the national scene. It had always been there, but as you brought in more teams, you got the St. Peter's. There's just fan bases. Look at the reactions on Selection Sunday for the NCAA tournament. When you go to a 12-team playoff, it's not going – college is different than the pros because it matters. It's more personal than the pros. And I think
you only have to play once. You only have to play really well once. In the pros, most of it's a series, so the chances of you doing that 3 to 7 times is not likely. That's why, if somebody gets hot from 3, like St. Peter's, and somebody doesn't play well, like Kentucky, that's how that happens. So you only have to do it once. Basketball or football is going to be a little bit tougher because eventually maybe the physicality is going to take over come the fourth quarter. But you only have to do it once. You only have to play well once to have that huge upset in college.
It will, and I'm like Jimmy in that respect of I remember in college, Big Mondays, Big East, Big 12, watching games at Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. We grew up watching that. I mean, Jim Boeheim was coaching when we were kids. He's still coaching, Jimmy. Jump in here.
Well, Dave, you mentioned something that I was thinking about at exactly the time it happened, and that is in that Big 12 championship game when Kansas State had the 11-point lead and they had a chance to extend it to 3 scores. And I was thinking Alabama's only shot would be if K-State could beat TCU by 3 or 4 scores, and they were capable of doing that. And when they fumbled that punt and TCU scored a TD about 3 plays later, you knew it was going right down to the end. And that ended Alabama's only chance. And as it turned out, TCU was in no matter what, by winning that Baylor game. And it turns out that one play kept Alabama out of the playoff. And that was on Baylor's final possession of that TCU game on that 3rd down play when Shapen had the tight end wide open for the first down, which would allow them to run out the clock and win the game. He decided to run it. Didn't make the first down. TCU got the ball back. And they, drove down to kick the field goal at the very end. And there was no mass chaos at all on that final field goal. You could tell TCU had practiced that countless times. They knew exactly which players had to go off the field. They knew exactly which players had to come onto the field to kick the field goal, and they just executed brilliantly. But had TCU lost that Baylor game and following what happened Saturday, Alabama would have been in. But I think the Tennessee argument is flimsy just because, first of all, their best player is not available for the playoffs, and that's Hooker. They're going to have him. But when you lose a game by 4 touchdowns to a team 7 days earlier that just got destroyed in the swamp, that a loss that late in the year combined with the Georgia loss, which the score was much closer than the game actually was, I think that made it really tough, for Tennessee to get in. But I will say this. Yeah, Alabama had a lot of flaws. They missed a lot of opportunities. But I can promise you that the one team Kirby Smart did not want to see in this playoff was Alabama. because Bryce Young is 100% now, and they have the personnel that matches up with Georgia, and Kirby knows it. And I think he's really happy having Ohio State in that fourth spot, playing in Atlanta with a month to get ready.
Yeah, well, Alabama is the years of 6 or 7 assistant coaches leaving has caught up with them. I mean, and I think my guess is Nick Saban, he's not getting out of coaching, but he'll probably go back to square one.
I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah,
Rob, I disagree with that. I just think that the players that they have are really good football players. They're not elite football players. Is there another team, in recent memory? I mean, do we have to go back to Miami or something along those lines? I mean, think about who was on this team at one time. Henry Ruggs III, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, that's insane.
Ridley.
Yeah.
Ridley, right? Yes. I mean, that's crazy. So so none of the receivers right now, I don't think it's coaching. Although some people would say that they didn't make the adjustments because they didn't have those kind of players. They're using the same offense. But none of those players would start for none of the current wide receivers would start for the 19 or the 20 Alabama football team. So I'm not sure it's coaching. They're still getting the recruits. It's just some guys are better than the other, right? I mean, it's not right. I mean, I think Bryce Young's better than Tua in college, right? Maybe significantly. But I think he's maybe the best they've ever had at that position. Right. Yeah. Very. So I'm not sure it's the coaching is turned over. I think here we're seeing the difference between really good college football players and elite college football players. Go back to that, Quinnen Williams team that lost to Clemson, right?
Yeah.
Who on this team is starting on that defensive line?
Nobody.
So it's not coaching. It's you're seeing the difference between really good and elite. And Will, I was kind of surprised about this. Heard this over the weekend. I didn't even realize it. Will Anderson led the SEC in sacks this year. Led the SEC in sacks this year with 10 and a half. Does anybody think Will Anderson had a good season? I don't.
No. Well, what games did he get those sacks in? How many did he get against Austin P? Look at it when it mattered. He wasn't really there in the game.
Austin P, honestly.
But Will Anderson, but he didn't show up though in the games when
he didn't.
Well, they didn't move him around either, like a player of that caliber should have been a position.
But other teams had a lot to do with that.
They didn't keep Lawrence Taylor in the same spot on every play during his career, But I
Will Anderson didn't have a year like he was expected to be.
Well, no, but I mean, at the same time, 95% of the players out there would take it. But I'm going to say this, Dave. I thought Saban was 100% right when he did say that one thing that really damaged the ability for the young receivers to develop was after the Bryce Young injury, he went 4 consecutive weeks where Bryce did not throw a single pass in practice. So there was no chance for those young receivers to work with him to develop, and which was badly needed for players with little game experience.
And you could see that. Was it the Mississippi State game where he could not throw it deep? He couldn't throw it deep. My producer, Michael Browne, on WNSP, and we had a guest last week that said the same thing, that the offense was just starting to get going when he got hurt against Arkansas. And so, you're right, Jimmy. That was that's an unfortunate scenario. Yep.
All right, let me just throw this one in, just along that line of logic. If Auburn would have had a quarterback who could throw the ball and would have had a better offensive line and better players on defense, they might have beaten Alabama. I mean, come on. Will Anderson was not allowed to have the great year that everybody thought he would because other teams didn't let him. It wasn't because Alabama.
Well, if I know where he's lined up every play,
but they don't.
Put him back there to help the team.
I know, but
we saw Jalen Carter run over the LSU offensive lineman, the freshman offensive lineman. We didn't see Will Anderson do that.
Will Anderson, I think. Look, the thing what I said about Alabama, the 6 or 7 years. This is coming from someone that knows Alabama program about better than any of us combined. And this person made a good point to me, said the last 5 years, if you look at the amount of turnover, it's just caught up. And that might explain look, we all know about that great photograph going onto the practice field of Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs III, and Devontae Smith, all first-round draft picks as wide receiver. We know about that. But I'm talking about the discipline. 32 penalties combined against Texas and Tennessee on the road. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, that little stuff. I'm not saying, look, he's going to get great coaches to come in there. Nick Saban has his way of doing things, but you have to be careful at this point in your career that you don't become like what happened with Bobby Bowden. You don't want to be a figurehead that hangs around too long, and then when you leave, the program has gone. Now, Jimbo had Jameis Winston come in, but Florida State has not been what they once were in quite a while. Yeah, they're getting there. But this coach they have, Mike Norvell, I watched him at Memphis, and all these people were like, oh, he isn't going to get it done. I said, give him 3 or 4 years. If they do, and he's going to win. Mike Norvell is one of the best coaches in America, hands down. And I'm not trying to knock Alabama. I'm just saying that's what I think happens when you've got so much turnover. You don't have enough guys that were there 3 and 4 years ago that remember how it once was. And I'll bet you a sack full of crystals, Nick Saban goes back to square one and says, we're going back to what we used to do. And they have the best talent in America. Look at that blue chip index. 85% of that roster on the last 4-year cycle is 4- and 5-star players. And this from Dr. Waller-May, agreeing with Jimmy. He said, if Jahmyr Gibbs catches that pass out of the backfield in Knoxville, Bama wins. End of discussion. Dr. Waller-May, since 1964, Tuscaloosa and Northport. Jimmy, you agree with Dr. May?
Yes, totally. He would still be running if he would have caught that pass on second down. But at the same time, if Alabama would have run the ball just once on that final possession, you're probably looking at a 45-yard field goal attempt instead of a 50. And Tennessee's not going to have enough time to, gain 55 yards on 2 pass plays against a 3-man rush. You talk about questionable coaching there on the defensive end of the side of the ball. And you could see look on Saban's face after those 2 plays before Tennessee, attempted that game-winning field goal. But there are going to be multiple changes on that staff. I can't imagine either coordinator being there next year. And there are going to be 2 or 3 other spots, I think, that are going to be filled also. And we'll just have to wait and see. But, yeah, there were multiple times this year, like in the Texas game, with 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes left, all they needed was to make 1 foot. They had 2 plays to make it on the Texas 20, couldn't do it. Texas drives down, kicks the go-ahead field goal, forces Alabama to have to drive down and win it on the last play. That happened against LSU when they couldn't get the 2-score lead at the end. It happened multiple times. So, there was just something missing with this Alabama team. But the Bryce Young injury, though, was fatal, though, because, again, he played almost half the season, not close to 100%. But, again, that's part of football. Injuries are part of football, and you've got to go with the flow.
Hold on,
Jimmy,
quickly, Rob.
We're going to go to a break. We got to take a break, though. Hold those thoughts, Dave. That's why I want to come back and hear it. But, no, Jimmy, you're right. It was near fatal. Bryce Young still, in my opinion, is the best player in college football. That guy is just absolutely to me, the best, but he was injured. That hurt. We'll be right back.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Dave Schultz, you were making a point before the break. We want to continue that.
Jimmy, whatever you got, I'll put together with what I got. Because if Rob Browne thinks they're going back to 3 yards and a cloud of dust with Blake Sims as a quarterback, I got a ton of money, and I'm going to take Rob Browne for everything that he's got. They are not going back to trying to play defense and run the football. They need to run the football better, but they're going to still do what they do. It will be interesting. Is Jalen Milroe the answer? Is Ty Simpson the answer? Some of these quarterbacks are going in the portal. There's some good ones, not so good ones as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And then you got some teams coming. I mean, Ole Miss, you presume they'll be better after another year with Jackson Dart. We'll see how that goes. LSU will probably be better. We'll see what Jaden Daniels' decision is. I think he should come back. I'm not sure where Jaden Daniels is on the pro ranking. I think he should come back. Everyone's going to be, and they already are, Jimmy. You see that? Everybody's already on the A&M bandwagon. One win, and everybody thinks A&M's going to compete again in the SEC West. So eventually they'll get it going. And so that SEC West, and then, Texas and Oklahoma are coming in. We'll see what happens when that happens in a couple of years. But I think Alabama's going to be fine. I think they may have tough sledding. Here's the thing. Everyone's going to tell you, I told you so. So Rob, at this point in time, next year is going to tell you, I told you so, because Alabama will have 3 losses. But in the next year, they'll be fine. In 2024, they'll be fine. I think Alabama's going to struggle, not because of coaching turnover, just because of the mass exodus over the last few years of talent that is not necessarily replaceable.
All I'm saying about square one, I'm talking about how he hires coaches, not going back to 3 yards, playing great defense, having 260-pound linebackers like Devontae Hightower. I'm talking about who he hires, because Bill O'Brien probably hadn't called an offensive game for 60 minutes in 20 or 25 years. And, that's the stuff I'm talking about. I think he goes back and starts hiring people that I think he makes better assistant hires. That's all I'm saying.
Alabama played in the SEC championship game last year and the championship game last year.
I know they did. But the discipline part of it, all the penalties, and I've never seen Nick Saban.
That's on Bill O'Brien calling offensive plays?
No, I'm talking about as a staff. As a staff, you've got to have those guys better prepared. Isn't that on the players? It is. It's a combination of it. But look at other elite teams or top 5, top 10 teams. I just don't see Georgia having this many mental mistakes. Not as many. They all do.
All right, so let's go back to Will Anderson, right? I mean, Saban called out Will Anderson in Texas, right? Will Anderson will probably be the number 1 defensive player taken in the NFL draft. So Saban even goes, look, if we jump off sides, on offense because we're on the road, all right, and if it's noise, I get that. But jumping off sides on defense twice, that's unacceptable. Is that coaching or is that on Will Anderson?
Well,
that's got to be on Will Anderson.
It is, but they got to
what does that have to do with coaching?
Accountability. I'm just telling you, in practice, they got to know if they do that, then they're not going to be playing. I mean, they're costing themselves.
Right.
They take the. That's all I'm saying that is coaching day in and day out. The mental part of it. That's what coaches do. And now when players make mistakes, the Jimmies and Joes, we know all that. But mentally, you've got to have those guys. You look at Nick Saban teams in the past. Guy picks a pass off a defensive back for Alabama in the end zone. He takes a knee most of the time. But you get these guys that want to run it back and they run it out 15 yards and fumble it and turn it right back over to the other team. That kind of stuff, players need to know not to do that. And they need to have another guy comes up to them and says, take a knee. That mental part of it, all that turnover on the coaching staff, it catches up with you. And it's caught up with Alabama big time of terms of having continuity and having stability. Nick Saban is still the rock, but we've talked about it. There's no Scott Cochran, strength coach in there, jumping all those guys. Alabama now is facing teams because of the portal, and we can't even keep up with all the guys moving around. That's the tough thing. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that he's going back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust. He will never do that. He's too smart.
Well, again, a lot of people want to blame the coordinators. I'm not sure where the blame it goes on Nick Saban, but everybody loves him, so he doesn't take any of the flack. Again, these guys, no one was complaining about Bill O'Brien against Auburn. I didn't hear that one, right? Because they put up a bunch of points. They were complaining about Pete Golding. So, no one wants to put it on the players. No one wants to put it on Nick Saban. And so we'll see who it is. I don't know who you're going to get. Frank Reich's available. Do you get him? So I don't know who you get. You could go back to, a former offensive coordinator or an analyst, Major Applewhite's down here at South. That's the Alabama offense. He runs that. So
I would not be surprised, Dave, to see Garrett Riley, the TCU offensive coordinator, Lincoln Riley's younger brother. I think that's a real possibility. And there are a lot of young comers and goers out there. Ken Austin, the former Ole Miss quarterback who was Freeze's offensive coordinator at Liberty, could be a possibility. I don't know if he's coming with them to Auburn, but there are a lot of choices out there, and that Saban knows who's on that list too. So
sure,
I think he's going to have somebody that's probably a little bit younger and is on some of these newer trends and has a few years of experience, teaching those.
So what I'm going to be fascinated on, and mostly because I need the content, when does he make that decision, Jimmy? Because some of these guys are going to be scooped up before they play in the Sugar Bowl. He's not going to wait 3 weeks, is he?
I think he already has privately, but I think publicly, this happens after the bowl games. Because in past years, certain coaches that have been known, to look for another job have been told. It just hasn't been made public. And at the same time, Saban needs to be praised because he many times is very helpful in finding those guys other places to go where it's not considered a demotion, at the very least a lateral move. So, but I think that's what you're going to see.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, listen, man, we've run out of time with this segment. Great stuff as always from you. I'm going to be, like both of y'all, curious to see who he brings in. Ken Austin, most likely, I would think, goes to Auburn with Hugh Freeze. Got a long association with Hugh Freeze, but we'll see. But the question is, does Nick Saban, is he, you got to go out to those camps. You got to be, he's relying on other people to get information from other people who get information from other people. He's got to get more hands-on, far be it for me to tell him what to do, but that's just, I see this happen. I see successful people that I deal with. They delegate way too much stuff. Read the book about The Art of Being a Billionaire. It talks about no matter how much money you have, how many accountants and attorneys and analysts you have working for you, at the end of the day, you better know how to go down and read a balance sheet. Okay. You better understand you're going to get robbed blind. You've got to start interviewing and being hands-on with the people you bring in, because just because you heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend that this guy's a good coach, you get him in there. I mean, not always so. Bill O'Brien had success saving Penn State from going off a cliff, but he ain't a great offensive coordinator.
Jimmy, do we need to get Rob help? Did you hit your head? Do we need to put you on sidelines concussion protocol? You realize they had the second best recruiting class last year? Do you realize who's number one in recruiting this year? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about games. They have the talent. They have the talent all over that field.
Did you get into the liquor cabinet this morning? What are you talking about?
I've been drinking some cough syrup.
You're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs right now.
Now you watch. I'm just saying the assistant coaches that he's got. That's what I'm saying. It matters who you have on that staff, and you've got to know. You've got to know more about the people that you hire. That's all I'm saying. That's it for him. That's for anybody. If you don't have good assistants and you're delegating all this authority, which a head coach has
been there
to do,
for a few years, and you don't think you knew who Bill O'Brien? You don't think you called Belichick and Bill O'Brien?
Yeah, he does. But I'm saying, look, do you think Pete Golding is doing a great job as co-defensive coordinator with Charles Kelly by Alabama standards? I mean, Gordon Ramsay, every meal that he puts out on a table, if there's one thing wrong with it, people are going to pick it apart. That's all we're doing here. I know Alabama. I know what their history is. I know what they do. I know about the red.
Rob needs a 30. Take a timeout. Rob needs a 30. Timeout. Take a timeout.
Well,
it's a full timeout. Rob needs a break.
But one thing, Dave. I think it's been obvious the last couple of seasons. The offensive line has been a real issue.
That's true.
And I think that's what's made Bryce Young's 2-year stint as starting quarterback even more amazing, because 90% of the quarterbacks out there would have been sacked twice as many times as he's been sacked.
Yeah.
And that Auburn game last year was a prime example. He got sacked 7 times. And I don't know if there would have been more than 1 or 2 other quarterbacks in college football that wouldn't have gotten sacked another 7 times. And yet he was able to just find ways to get out of trouble and make enough time to make some huge throws. And the 98-yard drive will be forever remembered.
It was 97 yards.
Sorry.
You've had too much coffee.
No, because I still have nightmares about. I
gotta go. I gotta go. By the way, going to New Orleans hopefully twice in 10 days. South Alabama's playing in the New Orleans Bowl, and then Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. So I will get my fill of beignets.
Tell them how they can follow you, David Schultz.
We are 3 to 6 p.m. on WNSP.com. You can listen live there or on the Sound of Mobile app at SchultzyCast on the Twitterverse, and the Locked On Sunbelt podcast, wherever you get your podcast, but now on YouTube. We put the first one on YouTube last night. So we'll see how that goes. Probably didn't have as good as hair day yesterday as I did today.
David, thank you so much. Love having you on. Look
Jimmy, take care of Rob. Make sure he's okay.
Man,
he fell down and hit his head somewhere along the way.
I'm going to check on him. Tim Horton, our buddy who's a Air Force assistant, always asks me, see if you can try to do something,
Yeah. See if you can help Rob out.
Thanks, guys. All right. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. David Schultz, WNSP FM 105 down in Mobile. First FM sports radio station, all sports in America. Well, I think what I'm trying to say, and I'm not getting it, I'm not able to put it in the vernacular as well as I would like to. It's just that as Alabama is so elite, their program under Nick Saban, that, I mean, you find any little blemish, any little chink in the armor, and it becomes a big deal. I just looking at the team, and it's just different. You've got NIL, you've got the portal, and Nick Saban he's going to be hard to argue he's not the greatest coach of all time. But Alabama is there last year. Yeah, they did play for the national championship. I mean, everybody would kill to have a program like what they have. I'm just seeing the penalties. I can't remember a year with Nick Saban pulling his hair and just looking so angry and frustrated on the sidelines. And you've got to, as a head coach, be going to these coaching clinics and getting out there and being on top of it. Because, again, as you delegate more and more authority to others around you, if you continue to do that year after year after year, they are really running your program. And let's be truthful about it. If you run a business, you own that business. Again, no matter how many smart people you have working for you, you've got to know how to read a balance sheet, a debit ledger, credit ledger. You've got to understand, book values and earnings and betas. You got to understand earnings per share. You got to understand all that 200-day. You have to understand all the minutia. It is what it is. That's why more than half of the Fortune 500 CEOs have an accounting degree. That's all I'm saying. And Nick Saban is like a CPA and a mechanical engineer combined in one brain. I've never seen anything like it. But I bet you he goes out and gets, because he's not getting out of coaching. I bet you, and he's got the money to do whatever he wants at Alabama. I bet you he makes a lot of changes on this staff, Jimmy. That's all I'm trying to say. And the discipline and the penalties, you learn about stuff like that in practice. And basically, if you keep committing these penalties as a player, you're off the field. That's all. That's how you fix that. Responsibility, authority, accountability. Those are the big three. And you got to hold people accountable. And with the portal, Jimmy, I think the biggest problem, we don't know who's on whose rosters anymore. Well, we do, but you've got to have like in the next 45 days, you're going to need that crawl at the bottom of the TV screen, aren't you, to keep up with who's who?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an age of entitlement for this generation of players. I mean, from the time that they were recognized as potential Division One players, they've been pampered in a lot of cases, prioritized, allowed to get away with mistakes maybe that less talented players would be able to. But as far as Alabama goes, I mean, I think I can safely say there has never been a program in the history of college football that has been scrutinized like they are every game. I mean, they lost 2 games with an injured quarterback on the final play of the game. And it's as if whenever they lose a game, especially for national writers in other parts of the country that can't hide their glee, you know, they basically act like Alabama should drop the sport. You know, I mean, I know that's going over the top, but I mean,
I see where you're
that
coming
type
from.
of joy, you know, where media people in other parts of the country, I mean, anytime Alabama loses a game, you know, they're all over it. And there's certain people out there that I won't mention by name, but there was one in particular who's a fairly prominent TV network play-by-play guy who said after that loss to Tennessee that make sure Alabama doesn't drop only to number 5 or 6, you know, things like that, you know, and
That's
that's
absurd.
just kind of the stuff you see. But again, that's what you're signing up for, whether you're a player or a coach in Alabama these days, as long as Nick Saban is in charge, because again, he's going to go down. He already is the greatest coach of all time, 7 NCAA national championships, and he's been in the hunt for several more. So that's just what you're going to get, and you're in the toughest conference in college football. So it's not easy for anybody out there.
No, it's not. And of course, the NCAA doesn't recognize national championships, but then people claim them because the NCAA in their record book gives them to them. So we don't know where we are. College football playoff championships, BCS, college mythical national championships. All I know is you're right. Alabama is scrutinized on everything they do, and Georgia's finding out now too. They're getting scrutinized on every play. Everybody's going to give you their best shot regardless. We'll be back. Franz Beard looks like he's found his way on with us right after this quick break.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne, Jimmy Hodge, Franz Beard, the Iron Duke. We're getting some feedback, Franz. I hope that's better now. Franz, Iron Duke, GatorBakeMedia.com down in Gainesville, Florida. Franz, we have been talking a lot about Alabama in that last segment. Let's switch gears, talk about the Florida Gators. Anthony Richardson, what's going on with him? Gators finished 6-6. They got a bowl game coming up, looks like the 17th of December. Not much time to prepare, but then again, they're already prepared. So it's not a lot of time off. They're not going to be rusty. State of the Gators. We got some time. Let's go.
Well, thanks to the transfer portal, we're down to 64 scholarship players. And that is if Anthony Richardson can play and does play. That is if Xavier Henderson's health will allow him to play. So the purge has begun at Florida. The problem is that with the transfer portal and NIL and all this other stuff you add in together, we're at an era where you're going to find a lot of teams scrambling to have enough guys to play in the bowl game. Last year, LSU only had 39 scholarship players for their bowl game. Florida's going to have, I think Florida's going to be fine as far as scholarship numbers. Now, if they could lose a couple more guys, that could be very serious problems for them. But right now, the only really what I would call significant loss at this point is Osiris Torrance. And now he has left the door open to play, but I don't think he will. He says, I'm going to declare for the draft. He's the kind of kid that might just say, heck with all this other stuff. It's only 2 more weeks of my time. I'm going to go ahead and play. It's one more ball game. And this idea of opting out for bowl games, what a crock, because you know, okay, guys who say, well, you know, this is all about me. Well, yeah, you have a future, but how many guys actually get hurt in bowl games? Not too many.
No.
And the fact of the matter is, the school is the one that gave you your opportunity. They paid all this. They paid for your health insurance, your college, and all this. Gave you 12 opportunities a year to show that you're capable of playing in the No Fun League. So why can't you give them one more game? And that just blows my mind. I think it's selfish. But let's face it, the kids, I think, would do it. It's their agents who say, look, if you will not play, I'll go ahead and give you your Mercedes-Benz. I'll go ahead and give you Christmas money. I'll give you $25,000 Christmas money so you can go buy your mama something new. And I don't blame the kids. I blame the agents, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this much. The term opt out, it's not a euphemism for I quit. It's the new word for I quit. And like Jimmy said, this spoiled, rotten group of entitled brats that are out there. And you cannot allow 18 and 19-year-old kids to write the narrative. Okay? Again, even my own children tell me, Dad, it's not the kids today that are the problem. It's typically the parents. As Kevin Skarbinski said on the show recently, you cannot be a snowplow parent. You know, you think there's some status talking about how many of your kids you have in rehab because you have a lot of money? You know, I remember my sister telling me one time, I thought I was doing really well in business and all. She goes, none of that stuff matters if you don't give your best time to your wife and your children. That's all that matters. You get back down to this, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to quit on my team because the bowl game doesn't matter. So what we've got now, guys, you got to stop that. People, coaches, hey, Franz, you like to go to Florida games, don't you? You could get hurt driving to the game, couldn't you? You going to quit going to the games?
No.
I mean, narcissism is alive and well. It's called the agents, the portal, and the NCAA caving to all these cupcakes. Hey, fans can go into the portal too, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget that.
Well, we have a real problem, and I think you guys would agree with it in that, okay, we got this notion years ago that, as you just said, we had to cave to all the player demands. And I agree that, players should get some compensation, particularly in football, because it's like I was talking to a fellow the other day who played for the Gators 40 years ago, and he can barely walk these days. And he says, this is a lingering from when I played college football, because I got hit so many times in my legs. And he said, it was always, I get hit on my legs on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'm barely able to walk. Wednesday, I'm able to kind of practice a bit. And Thursday, I can go through Thursday and Friday. I can go through the last two practices and then play on Saturday. And he says, I did that for 4 years. And he said, now, he says, here it is 40 years later. And he says, I have the same problem. I get up on Sunday. The only difference is come Thursday, I can't walk anymore. I still can't walk.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have quite grasped the amount of physical abuse bodies take. You take 4 years, you've played high school football. Let's say you were on the varsity for 3 years, then 4 years of college football. That's 7. Well, no wonder the average NFL career is only like 4 years, because then that's 11 years of having taken this beating on your body. It makes what Tom Brady's done. I'm absolutely, even though he's a quarterback and quarterbacks don't get hit that much, just the same. What's Tom Brady? 81 years old, been in the league since 1922.
Franz, I'll say this. Thanksgiving, I was at my brother-in-law's on Friday and Saturday watching college football up in his office. Kurt was in the Marine Corps 25 years. Somalia, Fallujah, all those nice places. And he had a helmet, his Kevlar helmet, stuck up on a bayonet. And I said, did they give that to you for 25 years of service in the Marine Corps? He goes, nope, I just took it. And he gets a little pension every month. And let me tell you something. The beating on his body, but he doesn't get all that. Okay. So all these guys, he knew what he was getting into when he signed up for the Marine Corps. Okay. Moving his family to Zimbabwe, Korea, Hawaii, you name it. But he's never asked. I've never heard him complain about anything. But I'll tell you one thing: when they call him to come to the airport in Clarksville at Fort Campbell, and they bring a soldier back that didn't make it, he's there. Don't ever try to make yourself better than those people.
Well, I got to agree with it. And here's the thing that the NCAA caves every time. And why? Because they've been beaten so many times in court, and they say, well, it's easier to cave than it is to go to court one more time. We can go back to 1996. Jimmy will agree with me. And in 1996, when kids were just saying, hey, pay for my health care after I finish. Let me come back and finish school when I haven't finished. That's what they asked for then. And if we'd given it to them then, we could have avoided all the problems that we have today.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Jimmy, jump in here, because we played kick the can for too long and got caught.
Yeah, and Franz, when you talk about these players that really started seriously competing at the high school level, 3 years, maybe their freshman year, they were just learning how to play, 4 years in college. And then what about these guys that played 10 plus years in the NFL? Man, guys like that. I mean, I'm kind of just at a point where I just cringe maybe at what those guys go through nowadays, just trying to, get up out of bed, depending on what position they played. So I think as, observers and fans and media people that cover these guys, man, I think many times that's overlooked, just what kind of physical challenges, they face due to their eagerness, to entertain us, and man, think about just the thousands of hours of enjoyment these guys over the decades have given us, and lots of times those guys played when they weren't 100%, at risk of, just like what you're talking about, damaging their physical health in coming years. So again, there are just a lot of intangibles that come into putting this product on the field, and all of us should be very grateful for it.
Yeah, just like the our soldiers and Marines that did get paid 35,000 maybe a year that go out there and do it, and they don't get anything really. They might get a pension if they were in for 20 plus years, but if they only stayed in for 4 to 6 years, and they were sent abroad because they did their job. I mean, my brother-in-law Franz is 67. He has CTE. Played college football at Virginia Tech, and but he also played rugby into his 50s. But he's a great guy, but it's a beating that you're right, Jimmy. I mean, you played college football and baseball, and Franz, you did a lot of stuff. I do a lot of stuff. The NFL, if you stay in 4 or 5 years, I think you get a pension. But the thing about the college is this entitlement of, I mean, Mark Slabaugh said it Friday on the show with us, ESPN.com. We've already had a major market correction because I always talk about the free market will work this out. The Texas A&M disaster. And all these people are going to jump on the bandwagon and pick A&M in the top 5 or 10 again next year. We've already seen this thing play out. It's called Gus Malzahn at Auburn. Okay? Now, there wasn't NIL and all that stuff, but, you're going to have a great 8-5 program. That's what you want. I don't see it changing. And Franz, you talk about the purge at the Gator program. Guys don't want to be there, get rid of them, but find people that do. Eventually, the portal thing will settle down, Franz, I think, because, it's hard to even keep up with the players on your roster. Do you know the 3 deep depth chart? It's a waste of your time anymore because those guys aren't going to hang around.
Well, I'll switch it to basketball real quick. Here's what Todd Golden basically said. He said it 2 or 3 times, most recently back in August. The basketball recruiting has changed unless your name is Duke or Kentucky or somebody like that, where you're going to get the 5-star prospects. If you're not going to get the 5-star prospects, then you have to take go live in an alternative universe, which is this. You get 1 or 2 players max that you think out of high school you're going to develop. And the rest of the roster, you fill it with transfers. He says, why should I waste all this time on kids that may or may not develop when I can go out and get a guy that's proven? He gets 12 points and 8 rebounds a game. He says, what more do I need to prove with this guy? Now, you look at what happened with the Gators yesterday in basketball. And Trey Bonham, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Will Richard, 14 points, hits 4 for 4 on his 3-pointers. Alex Fudge, 12 points, another big game for him. What do those 3 guys have in common? They're all transfers. They all came in this year with Todd Golden, and it's called the plug and play approach. And, the idea is in football has to be this. You only take a guy who's a one and done if you know he is going to start and star. The 2 S's. Start and star. Otherwise, you don't take a transfer who has fewer than 2 years, because you can't afford to do what Dan Mullen did when he brought in Antonio Valentino. He brought in Tyron Truesdale and Daquan Newkirk. All 3 of them, they weren't bad football players, but they only had 1 year and none of them were stars. And all you did was put a Band-Aid on a problem at defensive tackle. And who's paying the price for that right now? That price is being paid by Billy Napier. He desperately needs defensive tackles, but guess what? They didn't recruit any defensive tackles. Instead, they put a Band-Aid on a position with one and dones. And this is the secret of the portal. The smart coaches are going to go after guys that, like I said, if you've got an immediate need and you can get a one and done who's going to start and star, you take him. Otherwise, you got to get 2 and 3 year guys that have proven themselves that can come in there and they're going to be in your program for, and help to build the program rather than just put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, I agree. Franz, we got about a minute 45 to go before we got to get on to Jimmy Ott. But tell us real quick what you think recruiting is going to end up in about a minute time for the Gators. Top 5, top 10?
There's a real good chance they're going to be a top 5 because they had in 3 5-stars this weekend. I think they're going to land 2 or 3 5-star guys that'll push them up to no worse than about 6. I think probably they're looking at 6. 5 is a possibility. Going to be a really good recruiting class. They picked the Las Vegas Bowl for one basic reason, and that is they will be through with their bowl game. They just can go ahead and practice now while guys are still used to practicing. They can go to a bowl game that's done by the 17th, and Billy Napier can work on keeping guys from being flipped that he's recruiting, and maybe flipping another couple who are interested, like a couple guys at Miami that I think Florida's going to flip as well. Florida's going to end up with a class of, I think, 28 or 30.
Yeah. Well, bottom line, the battles between Florida and Miami are fun. It's just this. I know how much disdain you have for the Hurricanes.
The Hurricanes.
I mean, all right, look, we run out of time. I don't know what we got to get you on. Well, let's do this again later in the week because I know we didn't have much time today. You had some issues, I think, with receiving the link, but we'll do it again later in the week. That is Franz Beard, folks, GatorBaitMedia.com. You need to be subscribing him, Buddy Martin, Ben Troop, great folks down there. Buddy Martin Show, Franz is on there Monday through Thursday nights quite often with Buddy Martin, Facebook and Twitter. You got to follow it. But Franz, as always, thank you so much. Love having you on. You are the Iron Duke teammate of Tommy Petty. We'll be right back.
Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Hagen, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Hagen, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Rob Browne back with Jimmy Hodge, Jimmy Ott, the Ott father, ESPN 104.5 down in Baton Rouge, and LSU Tigers, great food, the betting lines, Bet Rivers podcast. You get it all when Jimmy Ott's on here. And Jimmy, LSU didn't get the win Saturday, but Jaden Daniels gets hurt. Garrett Nussmeier comes in. Holy shnikes, this guy is a baller. Let's talk about the future of LSU because, man, they've got some talent, as always, but they've got a coach, Brian Kelly, who seems like a really, really, really good coach. Where do they go from here?
Hey, guys, good to be on with you again. Garrett Nussmeier has always been described and played like sort of a gunslinger. He is not afraid to fail, and he will make some plays and he will make some mistakes. He was highly recruited. I mean, he's not some walk-on backup. The son of a former NFL quarterback, offensive coordinator who kind of really started to modernize Nick Saban's offenses in Tuscaloosa. And, it was a big coup to get him. Now, Walker Howard was one of the top quarterbacks in the country a couple of years ago. His dad kind of discouraged the whole it was actually part of the deal where this past year, his true freshman year, he was going to just sit out and mature and acclimate to college because his dad was forced into playing as a true freshman and had a tough experience along the way, when he started to make some mistakes. So that's going to be a real open competition. I don't know if Daniels is going to come back for another year or not. been hit and miss, man. He's been good when he's good. He's really good. When he's missed, like in the A&M game, when he made a mistake on the scoop and score, he tightened up. And, that's tough. And I know you had the guy from Florida. In Florida, LSU, and USC, as we saw on Saturday night, in these first-year coaches, these are highly incomplete rosters right now. All three have expectations. All three have resources, and I've got a lot of confidence that all three will have greatly improved rosters next year. So the one thing, and it's been an A for Brian Kelly. He's done a great job. It's ahead of schedule, but there's no excuse for a field goal team for all 11 of your players not to know the rule. And this has been a special teams disaster this year. And if Kelly wants to reassign Polian to a consultant or something like that, but you would lose a little confidence in Brian Kelly if he didn't make a switch right there, because this is not on the job training stuff. And it's for a unit that's been so bad this year to just, there's one thing, when all 11 don't know the rule, it hasn't been coached. And that's just inexcusable. So
yeah.
Good year, A+, gonna do very well in recruiting. We'll see how the transfer portal goes, but when you play a team like Georgia, you can't afford to, have these mental mistakes and his bad breaks along the way as well.
Yeah, and LSU, that's going to be crazy with Garrett Nussmeier. Jaden Daniels does come back. Walker Howard. Wow, what I hate that term, but it's true. I don't say him. It's just how many great players can you keep on the roster? We all know with the portal, it's going to be difficult to do it. But when is Jaden Daniels expected to make a decision? How soon do you think he'll say something?
Who knows? This is now the watch is on for these players to announce if they're opting out, if they're declaring their eligibility for the draft. So we'll see. The word I got is that he was kind of leaning toward moving on. Could he use another year? He's been very inconsistent, guys. He's shown what he's capable of. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. He's not going to run as much in the NFL. You just don't make a long living of that. But he's shown that he's capable of some pretty good things, but he's been highly inconsistent. So, I don't know, exactly the timetable or what he's going to do. But if my money was on it, I would bet that he would move on.
Yeah. Jimmy Hodge jumping here with Jimmy Ott, ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, it's interesting that field goal fiasco took place in the SEC championship game, because it had been long enough where the way LSU, with the exception of the A&M loss, had really gained a lot of momentum, and you tended to forget the special teams problems in the opener against Florida State that really created an obstacle early on to overcome, and Kelly and his staff certainly did that as the season progressed. But for somebody like Brian Polian, who's been a head coach at the Division I level, not to be able to, just handle special teams and educate his players that, yeah, it's different on an extra point than a field goal situation. And it just was a really bad look, because LSU had a chance to take the momentum early in that game and really make it interesting. And I mentioned it earlier in the show when they showed Kelly on the sideline after that play. He had this look on his face. Okay, I got these young players. It was almost something that's almost routine now in college football, with these young players that I don't think the on-field awareness that players did in the past. Right. And it's just something you have to just dust your pants off and go on from there. And just considering the overall circumstances leading up to the game, I thought LSU really put out a good effort. And it was a good experience for Nussmeier to have some success against the number one team in the country in a championship game situation. So how would you just summarize the game overall as far as LSU's concerned, and that they did get that experience, which nobody expected them to have before the season began?
I think, Jimmy, you're hitting on my biggest point. The experience was a good thing. It's a valuable thing. And, you go through just that's good. Okay. I have a little bit of an asterisk on LSU's somewhat success in that game. And keep in mind, they had over 500 yards. At one point in the game, they were outgaining them 170-6. Okay, and the game was tied, 7-7. I thought Georgia played like they had a game to play with. I thought Michigan did as well. Now, both of them won and both of them covered. Okay, but Purdue moved the ball a lot on Michigan. That game was much closer to the final score, and this game certainly could have been as well. You think that's Georgia's A+ effort defensively on Saturday? I don't. I mean, I just don't. And, that's where we are right now with the unique. We didn't have a whole lot of these spots where these teams, and it was obvious with Georgia and Michigan. We didn't know with TCU. But Georgia and Michigan lose, no matter what the score is, they're advancing to the playoff. And maybe Georgia might have gotten even a better draw. But I like that they didn't quit. They're an incomplete roster. They wore down defensively. I mean, and then listen, when you got tight ends like that, if Bennett makes an accurate throw, which I thought he did play at a high level, I thought he was pretty sharp on Saturday. Some of those plays are just indefensible when they execute them properly. But I just want to. I'm not going crazy into this moral victory thing about LSU was that good, because that's not the A+ intensity level from a Georgia football team that I saw Saturday.
Jimmy, here's a concern. My son Wilson brought it up last night talking about LSU. He said they only rushed for, I think, 43 yards in the game. I mean, you can throw the ball for 400 or 500 and lose a game. You're never going to lose a game, almost never, ever, if you rush the ball for 400 yards. And you're right. No, there are no moral victories. Not at a program like LSU. 3 different coaches in this millennium have won national championships. I mean, I think LSU in this millennium is the 5th or 6th winningest program in college football. And again, the level of success at LSU is so great that any misstep is magnified, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I don't want to get, this is an A, and I don't just throw them out easily. This is an A coaching job overall this year, okay?
No doubt.
But, but whether it's the missed extra point, whether it's the fumbled punts, and some things, when you fumble in punt returns, okay, let's put your best hands back there. Nobody's going to argue that Jack Best doesn't have the best hands. He fumbled multiple times. So some things I can look at both sides of it. But when all 11 don't know the rule, that's not being coached. That's being tolerated. It's just, and it's not a new rule. This rule's been around forever. It's like a punt until it's blown dead. And so that's disappointing for a staff that Scott Woodward is giving Brian Kelly a lot of money and also giving him a lot of budget for his staff. Napoleon's got a place in this program, but he can't coach special teams anymore. That's over. How many times, if you know anything about the history of LSU football, how many great punt returners have we had? I mean, it's every year. We gotta pick and choose, the punt returners that we have. You know how many punt return yardage LSU had this year?
Almost
25 yards. 25 yards.
For the season in 12 games, 13 games. Jimmy, I mean, those stats that you're giving, you're right. Special teams get so they're ignored to the point where look at it. 25 yards of returns in 13 games. That's 2 yards a game. It's a third of every game. Yet, as we've spent more and more time installing these high tempo offenses, we've lost sight of the special teams, Jimmy Ott, and it's to the detriment of a lot of teams in college football, isn't it? Okay. We got your mic. We lost your mic. If you can get that mic connected again, Jimmy, we can't hear you. So I just think Jimmy Hodge, what he's saying about the special teams, it's brutal. But Jimmy Ott, we got you back. Okay. Whoa. Okay. There we go. But I look at LSU. I look at Georgia. Who Jimmy Ott, who really has the great special teams this year in college football? LSU has a high standard. They're not close to it.
Well, I know, but I mean, I go all the way back to Billy Cannon, Tommy Casanova, Kevin Falk. Yeah. I mean, Chris Williams, the Honey Badger, Patrick Peterson. I mean, Dominic Davis. I mean, we always got guys that can, a little bit of a threat, return the ball. So I understand, but it's just been, some of it is just bad luck. Okay. Some of it is you got an incomplete roster. I get it. But man, some things are just indefensible. And so, it's been too much of an anchor. And, listen, LSU wasn't playing for keeps this year. All right. Even if they get in the playoff, do we really have a chance? I mean, I think you saw that on Saturday. I mean, how outclassed they were by the elite in college football. All right. But moving on, the expectations are moving on. Like Jimbo Fisher could have this year in year one. Year 5, that's hard to tolerate, So moving on, these type of things have to be tightened up. And listen, Brian Kelly is buttoned up a lot of things with this program, a lot. And you know what? He's been pretty damn easy to deal with in the media as well, coming over with the reputation of being one of the prickliest pears in all of college football. But he is. He's done a lot of good things, but this was a slam dunk. You can't. You got to move on.
Yeah. Well, the recruiting. We got a few minutes left. Jimmy Ott is going really well for LSU, and I think that you're right about Brian Kelly. I think he quickly realized once he arrived at LSU, this is a great place to be. And I think he's so happy it's changed his personality and the way he deals with the media. Who wouldn't be happy there, man? You wake up every day in bed with Miss America. You're at LSU, man.
He's acted like he's very secure. He's very comfortable that he's made his last lick in his career, and he's very comfortable in his cloth over here right now. Yeah. And and we all think our program's a little bit better than they are, and our talent's a little bit better are. But the one thing is, they say, with the right guy, they can do it. It doesn't take the right guy to win a national championship at LSU. So that's the thing. They've won 3 with 3 different coaches in the last 20 years. So listen, this is a well-coached team. Fine. House, I thought, had a amazing season on the defensive side, with losing his best player in the first game in Mason Smith. Now 40 emerged as our best player, and so there's some excitement that will help him in the recruiting trail, because I know he can coach. I've said this before. I've said this with you guys. I'm sorry to be redundant, but it's all about, can he get the roster, recruit the roster to compete at the highest level? And we'll see. Look, Rob, he should have a great recruiting class in the first full class. Napier's going to have one. Kennedy's going to, Riley's going to have one. That's usually the case, okay? That first full recruiting class. But, recruiting's one thing, and then evaluation development is another thing. And so we'll see. So they'll be better. They'll be better next year, and overall positive. But, just there's a couple of things that should be tweaked.
Yeah, Jimmy, we've run out of time. Want to say real quick, folks, go out and help people with the expectation and get nothing in return. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, and we're blessed to live in the greatest country in the world and have people like Jimmy Ott on. Jimmy, tell folks how they can follow you. You do great work, and can't wait for your next visit. I love the driving effect today. You are hardcore. Looks like an old movie when they're driving in the car with the big steering wheel and the scenery going in the background. I love it.
and driving back from Natchez to Baton Rouge, man. So yeah, I'm on Twitter at JimmyOt1045. We do a lot of sports gambling content. It's called the Sports Bettors Paradise, wherever you find your podcasts on the Bet Rivers Podcast Network.
Yeah, Jimmy, and this LSU, this team, think about a year ago, you had 38 scholarship players against Kansas. Look how far they have come. It's absolutely amazing just to watch this thing happen. But look, folks, again, got a great show lined up. We got Coach Houston Nutt's going to join us Wednesday. Tomorrow, hopefully Gary Stoken from the Peach Bowl will be with us, Yancey Porter. Whole lot to talk about. Until then, we're out here. See you tomorrow.